All right, today we're going to be making old-fashioned peanut butter fudge. This is a recipe that I've got from my grandpa, who I called Pops. He had some incredible recipes, and this is one that's a family favorite. We make it every year at the holidays. And today I actually have my uncle, which is my mom's brother, Pops' son, and he's going to share some tips from growing up. I have this entire recipe on my blog, so if you want to read more about it, you can. All of the exact details will be in the blog post if they're not mentioned in this video, but today's video is more about the fun and the tips that we can share as we're actually making it in real time so that you can have better success with your fudge. And first off, we actually just got done making a spiked hot chocolate with peppermint schnapps. Uncle Ted actually has a YouTube channel with some really great cocktails and really good food recipes. He's more of the chef in the family. I love the chickens and the gardening, and he's usually my helper. He's always in the background. You may have seen him in a video before. But anyways, we have a lot of fun cooking and gardening and doing all the things together. And he now has a channel that's really good. I'm going to link to it below. But Uncle Ted, do you have any tips growing up or anything you remember of making fudge with Pops?
Well, yes. If there was one thing my dad was going to do every year, it was make fudge. So he was the candy maker in the family. And what I learned from him is when he was making fudge, he never left the kitchen. So fudge is something when you're making any type of candy, you're always going to want to be on top of your temperatures. So pay attention to your saucepan and pay attention to your set temperatures.
Perfect. Well, I totally agree. I remember making fudge with Pops and Grandma, and they were constantly stirring and checking the temperatures. And they actually were able to do a lot of it even without a thermometer, which I don't recommend. But that's why it's nice having a helper actually to make the fudge, because it's nice to have someone holding the thermometer while you're stirring, because it gets a little bit crazy when the temperature starts approaching the correct temperature. You got to pull it off the stove, add in your peanut butter really fast. So having a helper is definitely helpful. Let's get to the recipe, show you how to make fudge, and you can see us doing it in real time. All right, so the very first thing is that you want to add your ingredients to a metal saucepan. I recommend using a metal saucepan, something that you don't have to worry about scratching, because one of the tips of making fudge is to actually use a metal spoon. And one of the things that Pops taught me is that you can actually watch the fudge rolling off the spoon as the consistency changes, that means you're approaching the correct temperature. Like I mentioned earlier, I don't even think I remember them using a candy thermometer, which I don't recommend. You should use a candy thermometer for sure, but they just had it dialed in. They would use actually a cold glass of water with ice cubes in it, and they would drop little drops of the fudge in the ice water. And as it formed a soft ball, that was the sign that the fudge was ready to take off the stove and pour the peanut butter in. However, I recommend using your candy thermometer, but you also still should use a metal spoon. It was just something that I was taught. You can do it differently, but if you want to make it like Pops, use a metal pan, use a metal spoon. And you're going to add 2 cups of sugar into your saucepan with a cup of milk, 2 tablespoons of cocoa powder, and 2 tablespoons of butter. And then you're going to just bring that to a simmer. And I also recommend doing this slowly. Don't cook this on high heat. Don't try to bring it to temperature quickly, because you'll be surprised how quickly you can get over temperature, which is going to ruin your fudge. It's okay if you actually undercook it a little bit, but fudge is completely ruined if you overcook it. So you want to cook it slow, even if it takes longer. You're going to want to stir it consistently. You want to just have it on a really low to medium heat. But then as you start approaching temperature, I actually recommend even lowering your heat so it doesn't happen too fast. And you're just going to basically stir that fudge consistently, watch the temperature, and that's where it's nice having somebody helping you. They can hold that candy thermometer, watch the temperature, and as you approach the softball stage, which is 240 degrees Fahrenheit, that's when you're going to pull it off the stove, mix in your peanut butter, and then you're going to pour it into a pan. And another tip is that I actually like to pull it off the stove at about 238 or 239 degrees, because even once you pull it off, it still kind of continues to cook. If you wait till it reaches that temperature, you're likely going to overcook it just a little bit. And then you're going to pull it off the stove, mix that peanut butter till it's nice and smooth and creamy. And if it's already forming fudge in the pan, you know you've overcooked it. So you want to just make sure you do all these steps slowly and correctly. And we're just going to sit here and watch the stove come up to temperature. And you can always undercook fudge just a little bit and it will still actually set up. But if you overcook it, it crumbles, it falls apart, it's not good. And if it's totally undercooked, you can actually pour it on top of ice cream. There's like other things you could do with it where it still tastes good, but overcooked fudge doesn't taste good.
And I'll get a video of this saucepan, but as you start coming up to temperature, that's why you really got to watch this stuff. If you let it get too hot too fast, this stuff will boil over. So we're riding kind of on the dangerous side here with this pan. As you can see how much it's came up probably 1.5 inches or 2 inches since we started. And that's why you want to keep stirring. Don't let it overflow. I think we're going to be all right because we're watching this very diligently, but you want to make sure you sit in front of these and you're always stirring. Not something you can walk away from.
Well, and we probably could have used bigger pan, but this was actually the only metal pan that we had today. So it's working out for today, but I probably use a bigger pan. The other tip that I remember learning from Grandma and Pops is that they never made more than a double batch at a time. Something about making candy like in a bulk batch, it just didn't turn out quite as good. So they said like you can make a double batch, but don't ever make a triple or quadruple batch in one pot. Just make 2 separate batches. Today we're just making a single batch, but typically I actually like a double batch because it makes your fudge a little bit thicker. Just don't go more than that in one batch.
Yeah, good pointers. And I make cocktails a lot on my channel, and that's kind of like it goes with cocktails. It's the same thing. If you try to make a double drink in one cocktail mixer, a lot of times it doesn't turn out as good. And people ask me why, and I go, well, I don't know why, but that's just the way it is. So if you want to screw it up, go ahead and make a double drink in a cocktail sugar. But really, it comes down to a lot, you're diluting the ice a little more. It's not going to be as cold. You're not making it as fast because you're doing that double batch. But really, it's kind of good advice. If you don't know why, what difference does it make? I don't know.
Right.
That's just how I think.
Yeah. And it's like, I think a lot of times people switch recipes, they add in ingredients or they try to change the sugar content or whatever, then recipes don't come out as good and they wonder why. So it's just a good tip. Stick to the recipe. Another thing I actually just thought of, first, let's check the temperature before I give that next tip. We're probably getting kind of close. So right now we're at 218, 219. All right. So we got about 10 degrees to go. Another tip that I actually learned this the hard way. So throughout the year, we tend to eat pretty healthy. And so I switched over actually to an all natural peanut butter. I quit using Skippy and it, without all the sugar and everything. It's just plain peanut butter, but that does not make your fudge turn out good. The consistency of it completely changes. And I never knew that until trying it. So I definitely recommend use a traditional peanut butter like Skippy or Jif. Don't use an all natural one that's just peanut butter. Same as what Uncle Ted was saying. I don't know why, but the recipe calls for, or recipe doesn't call for it, but I just remember Pops always using just regular peanut butter, your traditional Skippy, and it always turned out great. And then when I used that natural peanut butter, the consistency was off. It didn't taste good. So splurge and use the unhealthy option for the fudge.
So we're about 220 degrees and it's kind of stalling a little bit right around there. So we're going to watch it for another minute or so. And if it doesn't kick up, we're going to kick the flame up just a tad bit. This thermal pen could read up to, I think, 550 degrees. No worries on it burning it up.
And so Ted, I actually don't have one of these thermometers yet. Today we're actually baking at Uncle Ted's house. His kitchen has more space than mine, so that's why I chose to come over here. You can use this thermometer on everything, right? Your meat, everything?
I use it, usually I use it just with whatever I'm smoking or barbecuing, but it's good for anything.
Yeah, so like unlike using this like baking one, which can't be stuck into a hunk of meat, you can use this for everything.
You can use it for everything.
Okay.
It's easy to clean. It's like sealed. I've left it outside in the middle of the summer for like 3 weeks. I couldn't find it. It was out near my barbecue. It was fine. It holds up to the weather, the heat, obviously the heat, right? But we're still here right around 220. So we're going to kick this up a tiny bit and we're going to watch it close. If it starts getting crazy, we're going to lower it right back down because I don't know if you could see, but it's really ripping now. Once we just kick the heat up just a little bit, and it went from 220 to 221 within like, I don't know, just a few seconds, 10 seconds or so. So we're hoping we can get this up to as close as we can to 240 without it overflowing and just taking our time.
And this is the stage where it could kind of seem a little bit like you want to get impatient and crank the heat up more, but it will eventually, even if you don't make the heat higher, it will eventually get to temperature. But this is the part where you could really mess it up if you turn it too high and you get to 240 really fast, because then it's likely going to be over 240 by the time you pull it off the stove and add the peanut butter in. So just be patient. I just want to see use this one too and just see how close they are. Make sure they're the same temperature.
As you can see, it's really hard to see the markings on this.
Yeah, it's literally impossible.
Yeah, you can get close if you're just looking for, right around that 20 degree mark, or what does it do? 20 or 25 degree differences. So
yeah, and fudge, you need to be like on the dot.
Right. So this right now is reading what? Right around 210
maybe.
210. And why people use these digital thermometers is because this one's called a Thermo 1 because their claim to fame is I'll give you that temperature in 1 second. And see, it's right there within a second. It's reading what the temperature is. That makes a big difference when you're putting that glass thing in there and it takes you 5 minutes to settle out and then it's slowly going up and you don't know it's going up because it takes too long to read. So we're at 222. So we're climbing and we're getting there. 23. You make this every year, Audrey. Is this about standard amount of time what it takes when you make this every year?
Yeah.
You're going to stir it for 20 minutes or so.
Yep. And it seems like, I remember actually, as you like say that, I remember this one specific year making this with grandma and pops, and they're cooking a double batch, was a bigger pot, but it just seemed like forever. And I'm like, okay, just waiting. And it took a long time. And I just remember them telling me, like, to have good fudge, you want to be patient. It's going to take a while. I've made this before way faster, but it didn't have that perfect creamy texture like Pops' fudge was so perfect every time. And so this is totally like the right amount of time. So by the time you guys are watching this video, we're going to probably chop out some of this. This clip will probably be important that I'm telling you this, but we're at 16 minutes right now for a single batch of fudge in real time. And the video might only end up being 10, who knows? But I would say, 15 to 20 minutes for a single batch of fudge if you want it to turn out perfectly. You don't want to cook it too fast, and that's where you're going to mess it up. If you want perfect, creamy, like perfect texture fudge, slow and steady is perfect. And even once you pull it off the stove and add that peanut butter in, you want to stir for a long time and get it really mixed in. And if it's not overcooked, you should be able to stir for a long time. If you've overcooked it, it's going to start sticking to your pan and setting up in your saucepan. That was the other thing I remember is them just really stirring that peanut butter in, and then as nice and creamy, and it just like poured nicely into the pan. And yeah, it's definitely a slower process.
We're approaching 230 degrees right now. And you could see from earlier how much higher that was when we were around 210. You could see how much it's dropped down in the pan. So just keep on those temperatures and you see it's starting to reduce. So a lot of that moisture is coming out of this, and it's actually a little easier to deal with right now. Let's check the temperature. I think we were at 230, and this reacts pretty fast, this thermometer. 231. So we're almost there.
I will say, like, once you hit about 230, if your temperature is raising too fast, you want to lower your heat. Because in these last 10 degrees, ideally you want it to only raise 1 degree every 20 or 30 seconds, because that gives you plenty of time to check your temperature and you don't have to worry about overdoing it. Like, the worst thing you could do with fudge or any candy is overcook it. And so letting it raise the temperature slowly is perfect. So don't rush this last 10 degrees. Really don't rush the entire process, but at real time right now, we are at 23 minutes. So, you may be able to make this a little bit faster. It might take you a little bit longer, but just know that this exact recipe in real time, we're at the 23-minute mark and at 232 degrees.
We're in the home stretch, 233. Yeah, if you didn't stir this stuff, it would just be a hot mess.
Yeah, definitely some constant stirring. For any of you that are still with us watching this video in real time, you've made it this far. First of all, I appreciate that you're watching. If you're new to Audrey's Little Farm, I'd love for you to subscribe. I'm also going to link to Uncle Ted's channel. I would love for you to subscribe over there, especially if you're into recipes. Like I said, his channel has more recipes, but I was just telling Uncle Ted, one of the reasons I actually wanted to do this video today, it's a lot different than a lot of my videos. Usually I'm trying to cut to the chase. I'm doing lots of jump cuts, making it quicker so you guys don't have to sit around and watch this. But I feel like that might be the issue with a lot of candy videos out there, is because they actually do so many jump cuts and they don't tell you all the tips along the way that is going to ruin your fudge. And so actually making this kind of in real time and showing you more of the steps along the way is actually, I feel like, beneficial for a recipe like this. I hope you're enjoying today's video. I just felt like it was going to be more beneficial for you to have success with fudge this holiday season if you got to see a longer form video.
We're at 237. We're almost there. I'm going to start prepping the counters so we could get our move in from here to here, and we'll start putting the peanut butter in.
So actually what I'll do is once we get to about 239, I'm going to move the pan just to the one saucepan over. Uncle Ted's going to pour the peanut butter in. You're going to stir, and you're just going to continue stirring like crazy till it's nice and creamy. And then we're going to pour it in that buttered dish.
We've been averaging about 30 seconds. Once it hit 230, every 30 to 45 seconds, we've been going up a degree here. 239 right there.
And now we just moved it to the saucepan to the side.
Get that peanut butter in there and be very careful. This stuff is hot. If you get it on you, you're going to be regretting. Something to remember when you're making fudge. If you got little kids around, don't do it. make sure they're not around you, because this stuff, you know, it's 240 degrees sugar. It's very thick and it will burn you. We're almost there.
And then I'll let Ted get the other camera to kind of show you guys the texture of it and how we're still able to stir this peanut butter in. You should be able to be stirring this peanut butter in the pan. All right, and now we're going to pour it in.
We're going to switch spaces here. And remember, this is why we wear aprons, because when you're cooking and you got something on your hands, you're going to want to clean it off. So don't ever think you're too cool to wear an apron, because the cool guys wear the aprons. And the people who have stains all over their shirts wish they were wearing one. This is actually one that my grandma Vera made. She's 91 years old now, and she's made everybody aprons.
Yeah.
I got this one from a club.
Awesome. Well, we're going to let the fudge set up. If I could give you any last minute tips before you go on and make this recipe for yourself, is don't be afraid to pull it off the stove, even 3 degrees ahead of time. You know, we had the two of us and we were working at it together, but you're probably better off to pull it off at 237 degrees, even if you're all by yourself, even with some help. Sometimes the temperature continues rising once you pull it off. Check out the recipe in the description. And if you enjoyed this video, I would love for you to share it with a friend and follow us along on our YouTube channels. We will see you in the next video.